Hello, 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 and welcome to today's podcast of Her Version. This podcast is dedicated to sharing stories of struggle to triumph, a platform that allows individuals to tell their truth in order to inspire and uplift others. I am your host, Sabrina Victoria. If you are new to this podcast, make sure you follow, like, subscribe, and share. Let's jump right in. Thank you for joining us today for this episode of Her Version. I have an amazing guest speaker with us, Michaela. Is that right?
Yes.
Oh my God. Michaela is an awesome story of struggle to triumph. And I'm here today sharing her story. She's endured kidney disease, a husband who was enduring PTSD, and the death of two people closest to her. She is here to share how she overcame these obstacles and where she is now mentally and emotionally. Welcome. How are you?
Good. Thank you for having me on.
No problem. We were just kind of joking about how crazy things happen during podcasts, and there we go, right off the gate.
Hey,
one of the things that I always make sure I do is just like reconfirm the name, and I just totally forgot with what, got distracted during the pre-conversation, so I'm sorry about that. How has your week been? You told me that you're doing some stuff in your house. Getting some sleep, I hope.
Yep. Trying.
Yep. What kind of dogs do you have, by the way? You were just telling me about your dogs before we jumped on.
So at the moment we have 4 dogs. We had to put 2 of our babies down, which one was a Spaniel Pointer mix. That was our only female. And then my husband's dog, a boxer, we had to put him down recently.
Oh.
Yeah. So we have Champ, who's my baby. He's a lab, American lab. He's huge. We have a terrier mix. He's 20.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, these are all old guys except the new one. And so Champ's around 12, I think, and the terrier's 20. Our Chihuahua mix is up there. And then our new guy is actually from Puerto Rico, and he has one eye because it got pecked out by a rooster, so he had to have surgery.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, we've had him, I think it's been almost 4 months, and he's a spring chicken. He's only 3 years old compared to older old guys here.
Oh, wait, how does his eye get pecked out by, were they like in a brawl?
I don't know.
Or was he sick?
Going after the chickens. No, the rooster pecked his eye, so they had to take it out. Yeah.
The rooster just came up and just freaking jabbed him.
That's what I was told.
Oh my gosh, brutal. Well, that's a lot of dogs. Do you normally have that many dogs in your house?
Yeah, it used to be 5.
Wow, are these inside outside dogs, or are these?
Oh yeah, they're our babies.
That's cool. Wow. Well, listen, we have a lot to talk about, and I'm so glad to have you on. You're bringing up topics that I have not had on this podcast before, so I'm somewhat, sounds weird, but somewhat excited to kind of jump in and talk about some of this stuff, and for you to be able to share, how you're able to overcome it and where you are now. The first thing that I like to do is kind of just get an overview of your earlier years, and just kind of who you were as a child, and anything that kind of stands out as far as younghood and teenage years into adulthood. It's a lot of years to cover.
Yeah, as a child, I was very uncomfortable in my skin to start with. I grew up with a lot of abuse mentally, physically, and sexually. which took me a long, long, long time to get through. And then in my teenage years, I definitely personally went downhill. When I was a teenager, so, okay. My parents had a rough relationship, and then my mom ended up kicking my dad out, long story short. And my mom was very, I hate to say this because I feel like a lot of people look up to my mom. She was there for a lot of people. She was an amazing person. But with my relationship, it was very narcissistic. I mean, as we got older, it got a little better. But so there was a lot of different relationships with her and other people. And obviously I was angry with the situation with my parents. So I never got along with any of the people she was with. And I ended up hurting myself pretty much daily. Like I would cut myself pretty bad, my legs and my arms. So I'd wear long sleeves, so hopefully nobody could tell. And very, very depressed. And I started huffing fumes from
Wow.
nail polish and permanent markers, and nobody knew about it. Like my mom knew something was up, but she couldn't figure it out. And none of my friends knew. So when I went to rehab, it was kind of like they were confused because they didn't know what was going on. And it's interesting because in rehab, basically I learned how to hide stuff really well.
Really?
Yeah, and just a lot of like really stuff I would never fathom. And I was actually the outcast in rehab because I didn't do heroin, I didn't do cocaine, I didn't really drink. So I wasn't considered an addict by the people that were in rehab. So I was always the outcast. And, you had your certain people like the heroin people here, and then people that did cocaine and crack. And so once again, I wasn't fitting in.
Got it.
And I actually got kicked out of that program because I ran away too many times. And then I ended up at my dad's house, and I finished high school. Yeah. And then I remember 2 days before I was 16, I had, what's it called? One of my ovaries had a cyst and a tumor the size of a football on it. So they went in and took that out. Yeah, I remember because I couldn't really do much because they were afraid it was going to rupture.
How did you figure that out?
I had been going to a GYN over where I was living in Rhode Island, and they never said anything about it. I had a lot of discomfort, like wearing pants, and it was swollen in that area. And then I went to a new GYN in Connecticut, and they're like, you need to have surgery right away. Yeah, and they actually showed me a picture of the tumor after the surgery, because they're like, do you want to see it? Of course I want to see it.
Yeah.
But back then I didn't have a phone to like take a photo of it or anything.
Yeah.
It was amazing. Yeah.
Wow. So they just cut it out of you, and then you got to see it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like there in a pan.
Well, they had it laid on my stomach when they took the picture.
Wow. No kidding.
Yep.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
I want to ask, who, with the fumes and the cutting, who kind of caught on? Was that your mom that caught on, or dad, or?
My mom did, but she thought that I was doing it for attention. So everything was for attention.
And were you doing it for attention?
No.
Why were you doing it?
No, I didn't want people to notice me. No. Just to release the pain and to feel something.
No kidding. Yeah. It actually does make a lot of sense. Um, do you know of, is there uh, places to go specifically for that? Or are you always kind of thrown in with just other addictions? Like the way you were?
I honestly have no idea.
You don't know? It's interesting to me. Wow. Um, so you finished high school.
Yep. Yep, I did that. I really thought I was not going to make it through high school, and I graduated.
Congratulations.
Huge. Like, I did this. Yeah.
That's awesome. And what happened soon after that?
High school, graduated. So when I moved to Waterford, I started working at Shaw's, and I met this guy that I was really attracted to. So we started dating, and right now we've been together for what will be 22 years. So we were dating when we got, is that too loud? Can you hear that?
Ooh, I can hear it.
You want me to turn that
Oh,
up?
wait. I mean, it's like subtle.
Okay.
I thought it was a car driving by.
No, that's lazy. So after we graduated, let me think, where was I? We graduated in 2002, and then me and my boyfriend at the time, we ended up getting married because he wanted to join the military, the Army, and I'm not too keen. I wasn't keen on him doing that, but I didn't want to be the person that was like stopped him, doing what he wanted to do. So I said, all right. So I went to the recruiting office with him, and they basically said, you guys need to be married if you want to go with him. I'm like, well, we've only been dating 2 years. So I didn't want to get married, but I didn't want him to leave me. So we ended up getting married. And then 2 weeks later, I found out I was pregnant.
Wow. How old were you?
18.
No kidding.
Yep. So we got married April 14th. What's that? Hold on. I'm horrible with dates. April 14th. My son was born in 2003, because my son was born in 2004. I believe that's correct.
My son was born 2004 too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, March. What's yours?
January.
Very cool.
Yep.
Very cool. How many children do you have, by the way?
3.
3.
So now they're 17, 15, and soon to be 14.
Very nice. So married at 18.
Yep.
And then pregnant.
Yep.
Like right away.
So people thought that I got married because I was pregnant, which is totally not what happened.
Yeah, definitely.
And I actually, when my husband was in boot camp, I can't remember, just talking about this the other day, I can't remember if you have 2 or 3 or 5 minutes to talk, like once a day or once every other day. And I literally had to tell him, like, I'm pregnant. He's like, I have to go. So I had to wait until the next time I talked to him.
Really?
Yep. I'm like, so are you excited about this? He's like, oh, yeah. So I had to wait. Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
My nose is itchy. Sorry.
That's okay. So right after you are married, find out you're pregnant, and then your husband's just gone?
Yeah, he went to boot camp. I found out I was pregnant when he wasn't here.
Got it. Okay. So ends up in boot camp, and then I know that Germany and Iraq are somewhere in the mix of there. Do you mind telling that whole story?
I remember I was at the Westerly, Rhode Island Walmart. It was like the first super Walmarts we had. And I was walking into the store with my mom, and Dan called, and he's like, I got my orders. I'm going to be stationed in Iraq. No, wait, first, excuse me, back up. He went over to Germany, said, okay. And then he called and he's like, I'm going to be over in Iraq. So I ended up staying with his parents and living there until he got back from his first deployment. And then I went over to Germany to live with him in military housing.
Wow. And how was that?
I wouldn't ever do it again. I love Germany, don't get me wrong, but living in military housing, like if I knew, I would have lived outside of the concern. Yeah, because that's an option as well. But obviously military housing is free.
Yeah, no, totally makes sense. And then how long did that last for?
I think, let's see, I was there 2 years. He was there a total of 3. And then we ended up, so I had my second child, my daughter, in Aschaffenburg, Germany, in the Klinikum. And then we flew over back to the States when she was 3 months old.
Wow.
And thing.
And then that was just Germany.
Yes. And then we were stationed in Oklahoma. And then he ended up going into, I don't know what the unit's called, but it's a certain unit to help you process out of the Army. And then he got medically retired.
Got it.
Or honorable discharge, medically retired. Yeah.
Got it. So did he go to Iraq at all? Or am I just making that up?
No, he went to Iraq. He did 2 tours in Iraq.
Okay. After that?
Before that.
Oh, sorry, before that.
Skip that. I went all the way back to the States. No, while we're in Germany, he got stationed in Iraq as well. So he went twice, did 2 tours.
Got it. That makes sense. So as far as all of that goes, with Germany, with Iraq, how did that affect your marriage?
Honestly, it was like a living hell. He came back, you get your debriefing, which doesn't really give you much info. It took us forever to figure out what was going on with him. He has had multiple TBIs, which is traumatic brain injuries, and his severe PTSD. I didn't understand anything. He didn't understand anything. So we were both like at each other's throats all the time. And then our youngest son had a lot of issues, and that put fuel on the fire as well. And then, so the counselors at Germany, they're there for, I think like maybe 3 months, and then you have to switch counselors because they don't want people to get too familiar, because literally you can walk around the concern in like 5 minutes. But we had this one lady, I remember, she told my husband that all the problems were to do with me and my child, and that he should send us back to the States. And I will never forget that. Ever.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't know what happened to her, but I didn't see her again. And then we had a new counselor. Thank God.
Wow.
Yeah.
Crazy. So what kind of assistance did he get or does he get for dealing with that stuff?
At the time, they just threw him on medication, which did seem to work some of the time. And then he'd go off and it wouldn't be good. But then the medications that they gave him pretty much ate his stomach. Like he had a lot of issues, couldn't keep weight on, especially because when they went over, I don't know if it's the first or second time to Iraq, they used MREs a lot longer than they're supposed to, and that really messed up his stomach. So it took years for him even to gain any weight. Everything would just go through him, like all his gut flora was gone.
Wow.
Yeah, a lot of
wow.
pain. And he ended up getting off the VA medications because some of them had some scary side effects. And he's doing pretty good. He started to see, it's been a few years, really lovely woman up in Enfield, Connecticut. She's an energy healer, and he started with her. And after a few times, I'm like, hey, I want to go. Like, I want to have a session. Mind you, she works with veterans for free. Like, I paid her for my sessions.
Wow, no kidding. So
Yeah.
so what made you go that scares people sometimes. So how were you able to have an opening for that being an option? Like who
It was pretty much at the point where you either do something or I'm gone.
Wow.
Yeah. Like it got that bad.
Wow.
Yeah. And do you mind if I go run and grab her pamphlet? It's like 2 seconds away.
Yeah, of course.
Show you?
Yeah.
All right.
What are you doing? Hi.
Okay. I don't know why. I always get the name wrong and I'm like, I can't get this wrong. It's Well-Being for Warriors. So she's in
No kidding.
Enfield, Connecticut, and she's amazing. There's like a huge umbrella of practitioners she has, and the stuff she offers. She's an amazing woman. Her name is Deborah Stegmeyer.
How did you guys find her?
How did we find her? Somebody told me about her. I don't know if it was my counselor at the time, because I saw a counselor as well. No, I didn't see her till later. I can't remember at the moment.
Wow. Well, thank goodness, right?
Yeah. She's
Thank
been
goodness.
a blessing.
Yeah. So he starts seeing her,
Mm-hmm.
and you start seeing some changes.
Oh yeah. So it's not like rainbows and sunshine. You have to go through the trauma before you get healed from it, but the ending is 110% worth it.
Wow.
But going through, drudging through all of that muck is pretty intense. I will say that.
I bet. Did you guys do any sessions together?
We did not.
It's always separate.
We were both working on separate stuff.
Very cool. Well, that totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Two totally different situations, basically, and then trying to come together.
Yeah.
So yeah, that 100% makes sense. As far as seeing those changes happen, how long until you guys actually were like back on track? Did it take a good year or 2 or 5 years, or how long did it kind of?
I think we both saw her for around 2 years.
No kidding.
The reason I went to her is I was sick of my shit. I'm like, I need to let go of this and move on. You just gotta
100%.
you just gotta get sick of it.
100%. That 100% makes sense. As far as life continues to happen. So you could be going through things, mental, emotional, babies, and your life continues to roll on. Do you mind stepping into these scenarios that happened regarding people that were really close to you dying in and amongst all of this?
So I have this friend, I call her my twin flame. We've been together since we were 2 years old. My mom and her mom were good friends. We actually met together at not Miss Rowell, another lady. Anyway, at our, what's that thing called after school that the little people go to? Not
like aftercare?
But it was at somebody's house. It was small. It was only a few kids. It was really nice.
Daycare?
Yeah, we'll just leave it at that. So we met there, and we'd been friends ever since. She, several years ago, had a brainstem stroke. So she was pretty much in a vegetative state. Like, she could say yes or no with her eyes. She could laugh and cry. And they actually did studies on her in New York to prove that she could sometimes have a connection. And when she had that connection, she could speak. And that happened, I believe, once or twice. But her mother was very, very active in her life after she was in a care facility. But her mom would go, and they would go do outings and so forth. Like, we would go out to eat. And her dad would come. Her dad would sit there, watch, I believe they would watch videos together. And he was a huge person for homes. So, like, it wasn't like she was stuck there. She had visitors. People went to go see her. And when this happened, actually, I was living in Germany. I was pregnant with my daughter, and I was on bed rest, so I couldn't travel to her. I remember my mom, I don't remember if my mom called me or if I called her, and she told me, I remember I fell on my kitchen floor and I couldn't breathe because I just felt like this helplessness. Like, I can't, I'm in another country and I can't get to her. Like, not that I could really do anything. But my mother, her mother was actually in another country as well when this happened. And her dad and my mom were there. So my mom decided to have the brain surgery, even though it's really risky to go in there and whatever they do with the clot. Yep. So she was that way for several years. And then after her body just kind of, had enough, and she passed away. Like, I've had a few people that were close to me pass away, but this was like half of me died. It took me a long, long time to, I don't want to say get over it because that's not the right word, function correctly, I guess. Yeah.
Did you get to see her at all?
I did. I went, when was it? 2 days before she passed away. I slept over with her. And then, 2 days after she passed away, she waited till she was alone.
Wow.
Yeah.
And Charlotte, I think, just asked, how does it happen? Like,
Just sudden.
Yeah, like, just, she's totally fine, and then...
She was in college. She went to all girls college. And they heard her scratching, but she really liked animals, and she would bring animals in that she wasn't supposed to have there. So they didn't want to get her in trouble. So they just assumed it was like a cat that she brought back to the dorm. But the next morning, I believe, they tried to open the door because they saw her hair underneath the door and they couldn't get it open. So I don't know how long she was there.
Oh my gosh.
A lot of damage.
So somebody just saw like some strands of hair sticking out of the door and realized.
Yeah.
No kidding.
Mm-hmm.
Called 911, took her to the hospital.
Yep.
And then that's it. And then you're in Germany.
Yep.
Wow. So did she have any like emotion, or could she speak? Nothing?
No, she could. Well, once or twice she did have the connection. that she did say, that's what she said. She said thank you to one of the nurses that was helping her.
Wow. Have you spoken to her parents?
Oh God, yeah. Her mom is like my second mom. I pretty much grew up in their household. So we talk all the time.
That's awesome.
And I actually just saw her, and I'm going to see her for my birthday on the 9th.
That's great.
Yeah. I call her my heart mom.
I love that. I love that. And then I know that there was a year later, 2 years later, something?
It was several years later. My mom got into a motorcycle accident with her boyfriend. She had severe injuries, and she ended up passing away 7 days later on Maggie's death date.
Wow.
And then my uncle died 2 days later, and then my cat died.
Oh my.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I'm sorry about your mother.
Yeah.
How was that? How did that hit you?
Well, it was it was hard. So when it had happened, I was actually at a go-kart place with my husband and my youngest child. And her boyfriend called me up all frantic. He's like, I want you to know that we were in a motorcycle accident. I said, all right, well, what hospital are you in? He's like, I have no idea. Okay. So I'm like, go find a nurse, somebody you can talk to and figure out where you are.
Yeah.
So he was in South County Hospital in Rhode Island. I said, all right. I said, well, where's my mom? He's like, I don't know. They took her. I'm like, oh, shit. Okay. So I literally hung up with him. I got out a piece of paper. I wrote down every hospital I called because I was frantic at this time. Like, where the hell's my mom? But then I was like, okay, breathe, calm down. I'm like, where do they like to go? They like to go to the Oyster Bar in Rhode Island. So the hospital is South County. There's Westerly Hospital. She wasn't there. And then I was like, oh, they like to go up to Providence sometimes. So I called Providence, and they're like, hold on. All right, I'm on wait. They're like, we have a Catherine Fuller here. All right. So they let me know that she was in critical condition, that she was going up to whatever ICU, and that she'll have a room. So I had to have my husband drive me back to my house. I lived in East Hampton, which was an hour away from Rhode Island. So I had to drive. I drove to my brother's house because my brother picked up my mom's boyfriend. I was trying to keep him calm. And then we both got together in the car and rode up to Rhode Island Hospital. And she was still in the emergency room. I get there and she's like, well, I guess I've had 47 good years of riding a motorcycle. I'm not going to get back on one again. You think? Yeah. So it was kind of messed with your head, which I didn't really think about until my brother said something. Because even though she was in such critical condition, she was still talking to us, like everything.
Wow.
Yeah. So I originally, that night, I brought her boyfriend back home in East Hampton. Then I went home, and then I ended up just staying at my brother's house because I couldn't be there crazy early in the morning with her and then do the hour ride and then back and forth. So I just stayed at my brother's, which was, I believe, like maybe half an hour away from the hospital. Yeah.
So her boyfriend goes home like that day?
He went home that day. He came back.
No, like he's just fine?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he had some scrapes on him.
How does that happen?
So what happened is there was a white Caravan minivan, and she did a legal U-turn. Mind you, she was like 80 something. She did a legal U-turn, and then the guy, my mom's boyfriend, hit the back of the minivan. My mom went flying over the minivan and landed, and he just got some bumps and bruises. Yep.
Wow. So they're going straight,
Mm-hmm.
and then this car does an illegal turn. They don't stop in time, hit it, and then your mom goes over.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
What were your thoughts towards the boyfriend?
I wholeheartedly believe that when you're supposed to die is when you die.
Okay.
So that plays a big factor. I mean, was I envious, pissed off, just pure anger? Yeah.
Yeah.
Not really, not at first, not directly at him, but as he was still living and went on with his life, I got angrier and angrier because he was still here.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's a lot to go into that, but there was a lot of hate and anger. Definitely.
Yeah.
It took a while to build up. I think I was in shock for a long time.
Wow. So obviously probably no brain damage. It was just her body was just
Yeah, so her ribs
broken.
were literally, we saw the scans, literally like a jigsaw puzzle. Her ribs were in her lungs, so they had a tube draining out of her to get the blood out of her lungs so she could breathe. And they said either there was two options. She could have a procedure that was, the death rate was really high, and then she would have to be dependent on somebody, or she could just wait it out until she passed away. So I knew her boyfriend was newer in the picture. They've been together for like a year. And me and my mom and my brother have always talked about if we ended up like this, what we'd want. And I instantly knew, like, my heart just sank because I knew my mom wasn't going to have somebody helping her.
Yeah.
She was a very independent person. So she chose to just pass away naturally from the damages. And he was kind of upset about that. But that's what my mom wanted. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that kind of makes me happy that she had a choice.
Yeah.
She wasn't like dying in agony all of a sudden. Wow. Are you an only child?
No, nope. I have two brothers. One is 8 years older than me, and then the other one is 4 years older than me.
And then were they kind of, or all of you kind of involved in all of this, and
At
least by telephone or something?
My younger brother hadn't talked to her for years. Me and my older brother were pretty much in her life, or she was in our life even, a little overbearing. But so the first night when she was in the hospital, and we ended up, or second night, maybe it was the second night, we ended up calling people and letting them know what was going on. And my younger brother came in and visited her late at night, and he hates hospitals, when nobody else was there, which I really appreciate that he was able to do that for himself, even if they had just medicated her. So she was out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense. So with all of this that's going on from age 18, literally, when did you finally start to kind of really find some peace and settle in and reopen up?
I'd have to say about, what's it been? About 4 years ago, 3.5, 4 years ago. Yep.
Could you feel the heaviness of all of that, or are you kind of oblivious to it?
Oh yeah.
Because that has to really, like, that's so much, just like,
very, very dense.
yeah. So you could feel it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And it's kind of funny because um, you think about it, like when I started seeing Deborah, I'm like, well, if I heal this stuff from my past, obviously it happened to me, but it's not going to define me anymore. And I was terrified. Like, who am I if I'm not this bitter person that this happened to me, that happened to me? Um, I have flashbacks because of this happened in my childhood or whatever. I was terrified that I wasn't going to like have that identity, which is really weird because at the end of it, I mean, we talked about it obviously, and she's be like, it fills with love and light, and you feel so much freer. You don't have all this stuff weighing you down, and yeah, you might have a memory, but it's not traumatizing to you anymore. And I was terrified, and I have to say, if you're able to do the work and go through your own bullshit and everything you've been through, which are just lessons, do it.
Yeah.
Do it, because it's so worth it. Like, why are you going to live there in this low vibing energy when you can be way up here and be happy with who you are? You don't need to, whatever happened in your past, it was supposed to happen. It doesn't matter how bad it was. Like, you got to keep going higher. And, a lot of people are afraid of what other people think of them. No, you can't live like that. Like, you're miserable. Why do you want to live like that? Like, who gives a shit what other people think?
Yeah.
Honestly, like, obviously you care about people's feelings, but if somebody's going to look at you from a point of view, it's their perspective. It's how they view the world. It's not about you.
Exactly.
That's their issue. Like, everybody's done stuff they're ashamed of or was ashamed of, and that's life.
Yeah.
Like, block that shit out.
I love that you're talking about that, the identity of who you are and letting go of that. When did you, like, do you remember actually kind of struggling internally while you were learning? Where you're kind of like, wait a minute, I don't want to learn anymore because that happened to me. Do you remember something like that where you were really struggling?
I honestly, I don't think so.
You were ready to let it go.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I think I was ready. So ready. And it's interesting because I had brought my husband to a, can't remember if it was at a VA or something else. Basically, it was like a in-care program for people with PTSD.
Mm-hmm.
And the lady was explaining PTSD and stuff, and I didn't realize that obviously it's different from his trauma, but I had PTSD, and this is why I had flashbacks, and this is why certain stuff makes me cringe, and like a light bulb went off. And that was huge. I mean, I wasn't going to say anything because we were there for him, but yeah, it was crazy because I still don't like to talk about it, but with sexual abuse, a lot of the people, you just feel dirty. And I was so sick and tired of feeling dirty. Like, I wanted to love my body. And that's another thing. A lot of people with low self-esteem think of themselves like just worthless. And to not feel that is amazing. I mean, a lot of work goes into that. I had regular counseling. I had energy healing. I do mantras daily. I usually do meditations daily, but this week has been not so good with that. But I'll get back into my groove. And yeah, it's definitely nice on the other side.
Definitely.
Yeah.
100%. What steps did you take to finally, other than the healer, the energy healer, what other, steps are you taking? Were you taking?
I feel, so the lady that I had, Deborah, who was an energy healer, and then I had my counselor. But my counselor, she was amazing. She was in the military, but I don't think she ever saw combat. but her goal was to help veterans as much as she could. And so she understood a lot. So like my husband would come into some sessions, a lot I did alone, but it was definitely helpful to have somebody that understands the military lifestyle, which is totally different from civilian. Because I've been to a lot of civilian doctors or therapists, and just didn't help. Like actually, my therapist told me, she's like, I think you're all done in therapy. I think this is our last session. I was kind of like, really? Like, I enjoy going to see her. Yeah, it's like my time.
Yes.
But I've never had a therapist tell me that ever. She's like, yep, I think you're good.
That's great. That's great. Is there anything or any steps that you guys took, you or your husband, or however you want to comment on that, things that you did that didn't work?
The medication through the VA, because they would just throw stuff at them, see if anything worked, which usually made it worse.
How did you find out it didn't work? Just like after a few days, you could just tell it wasn't?
It took the medications would take a few weeks to kick in.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes symptoms would get worse. There was a medication he went on, which made him violent. So obviously that's on his record now. Yeah. So that's kind of scary.
Yeah.
But I was going to say, with helping, I think it's a huge step when you're in your relationship and you're so used to being like closed off, is actually opening to the person. And just being able to freely express how you feel without the other person bashing you or screaming at you. Like that's a huge, huge step that we're able to do now. We're able to communicate with pretty much everything.
Isn't it interesting how when you finally learn that, it's kind of like, wow, this is so easy.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
Right. Yeah. And then like you're freaking out about something that you think is so big, and it's really not.
Yeah.
Yep.
100%.
I think we get so wrapped up in our head, like in our minds, and the ego takes over.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. Have you, I think I remember, but I might be confusing you, so I apologize, but meditation and Reiki, have you guys done that?
So I'm actually a Reiki master.
Yes.
So after my mom passed away, I actually read a book. It was like Beginner's Reiki or something. And then it was just like this draw, like this is what you need to be doing. So I went and did Reiki 1, Reiki 2, and Reiki Master. And then I opened my practice. It's going to be 4 years. Yep.
Fantastic.
Yep.
And how has that changed everything? First of all, can you explain what it is? I've never had a Reiki master on here before, so.
So Reiki has to do, it helps you heal spiritually, emotionally, physically. And so we're all made up of energy. And we do have, I'm sure you've heard of people talk about chakras. We have, the main 7 chakras. We have more than that, but there's the main 7 chakras that Reiki focuses on. So our body, say those emotions that I was holding on to, that there's this black ball of anger in my stomach, that creates disease. That's my belief anyway. So I help move those energies out, anything that doesn't serve your highest good, and make room for new stuff. It's very relaxing. Some people have emotions that come up, say emotions, it's just a very calming, relaxing practice, and a lot of hospitals actually use it for cancer patients. And then my hospital over here actually will give you Reiki sessions before your surgery. So that's
wow.
Yeah, they have Reiki people on staff. I think they have like 1 or 2 people for the whole hospital, but it's better than nothing.
I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, I want to ask you though. So now with this new knowledge that you have, do you have any thoughts on the mass that you found in your body when you were younger, or not? You don't really think about that?
Actually, I haven't ever thought about that.
What?
No, I really have not. I have not. I haven't. Um, I don't know.
That's interesting.
Maybe all of the things that I have had experienced, but I know we didn't talk about it really, but I had, they call it MSK, which is medullary sponge kidney. So my body basically would take the calcium carbonate in my body and make stones. So I'd have to have surgeries pretty much back to back. It got really bad. And that was before I started seeing the energy worker. And then after I I had worked through all those traumas, guess what? I haven't had, knock on wood, any kidney stones or had to have surgery, because I literally would have, so awful, so awful. What do they call it? They'd go in, blast stone, take the pieces out, and then you'd have stents, which is worse than a kidney stone. I don't know. I'd rather be in labor. The pain is so bad. Like,
wow.
painkillers did not touch the pain. Yeah, because I remember the first kidney stone I had, I don't know what the hell was going on. They gave me 2 rounds of morphine. That didn't help. So they ended up giving me Dilaudid, which actually is the only thing that works for me for pain. Yeah, so I went through a few years with kidney stones and dealing with that pain as well. But after I had worked through all my crap, I haven't had any issues at all.
Isn't that crazy?
Like, I didn't really change my diet. I'm allergic to a lot of stuff, so my diet's pretty plain. Anyway, yeah.
That's great. That's great. So as it is now, it's so interesting having conversations like this because, I see you now and, how bright and light and happy. And it's interesting sometimes because I think, like, I wonder who that person was, 5, 6, 10 years ago or whatever. And how interesting it would be to actually see the transition mentally. But how do you decide to show up for your world now?
Right now, I'm focusing on, so my older 2 are in high school. And then my little guy, I call him little, he's 13, but he's my little guy. He's homeschooling. He's been homeschooling for 2 years because he didn't do good in school. He just never, I feel like he soaks up all the energy of everybody, and he doesn't know what to do with it. He needs one-on-one, which, mind you, he has an IEP, but they couldn't give him what he needed in school, and they kind of just pushed him along. He had been typing, because they use their Chromebooks all the time, so his handwriting was pretty bad. So the first year we really, really worked on handwriting and cursive. So just focusing on him, like we do homeschooling from usually 9 to 12 or 1. And then my business, I book people from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. So I have that time in between I can eat and whatnot. And then this summer, I actually have been working on creating worksheets for children and adults. I created a course, which is awesome. And I have an idea for 5 books. I've started 2. So I really want to get through those and get those published because I know they can help other people. It's just hard to sometimes write some of the stuff down on paper, but I'll get there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. That's great. That's great. So speaking of books and 5 books and programs, what's the plan for the next few years? What do you have going on?
I think that would be my goal, is to get at least one book finished. I've never published a book, so I would have to figure that whole part out. And I'm really happy when I'm creating stuff. Like obviously I love doing Reiki on my clients. That's awesome. But I really enjoy creating stuff.
That's great. That's great. Are you more of a visual creativity or more words and mental creativity?
Visual. So it's my worksheets that I have. I did like fun photos in them, even for the adults, because why not? I mean, who doesn't like pictures? Yeah.
Good for you. My stuff has no pictures. Maybe I should collaborate with you.
You know what's really, really good? Well, it's kind of addicting too, is Canva.
Yeah.
Canva. Because I had the free Canva and I'm like, I want all that other stuff.
Yes, yes, yes.
I mean, it doesn't cost that much and I use it like all the time. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, I don't have it. My the guy that does my marketing uses it and his graphics are pretty good. I use PicMonkey.
I've never heard of that one.
For all of my, well, I just do the thumbnails, so I'm not really doing anything too crazy at the moment. But yeah, all the ladies that I talk to always say Canva is the best. I've never even been on the website before though. So listen, I appreciate you being here. I appreciate your insight and where you are now and all the things that you're creating. I do want to ask you one last question. I want to ask you what you would say to your 20-year-old self if she was sitting here right now.
I actually wrote it down.
Yes.
Toxic people are toxic people even if they are family. No matter what part of your family they are. Even the closest people to you. And then my second one is keep your vibration high to heal yourself. And I think I used to hold on to relationships because I felt like, if we've had a relationship for a long time, you should keep that relationship. But no, relationships are here. They ebb and flow just like everything else. And there comes a point where it's not that maybe you still get along, you enjoy each other's company, but your energy vibration is different and you just don't really come together anymore, which is fine because you'll find new people.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But it can seem lonely when going in like a transition like that.
Definitely. I love that. I often think about what I would say to my 20-year-old self. It's hard because it's kind of like I wouldn't have necessarily talked her out of anything because I am where I am because of my 20-year-old self.
Yep.
So, it's kind of a difficult question. I love asking it just to kind of see the response.
Yeah. When you asked, I was like, oh my. It's like, I really don't know. And I'm like, wait a minute. Yes, I do.
So any closing thoughts?
Not that I can think of. And I'm very grateful for you to have me on here, and it's pretty cool.
Thank you. Well, listen, it's women like you who are willing to come on and share a little bit part of their story that's actually creating the community. So I appreciate you taking some time out of your day pre-podcast, because sometimes people don't realize that there's a whole conversation that happens to just create the podcast. So thank you for your time before and thank you for your time today. And I certainly hope to be able to create more things like this with you in the future.
Yeah.
If times work out with my round tables, I think that, the experience that you bring is definitely valuable to other females out there. So, well, I'm going to close up. I'm going to say thank you for joining us today, whether you are here watching us live or if you are watching us on the replay. This podcast is called Her Version. If you have an amazing story to share of struggle to triumph, be sure to reach out to me here or at herversion.life. I am your host, Sabrina Victoria, and I'm so grateful to be here sharing a platform that allows people to share their truth and inspire others. Have an amazing day. Much love.